Today, we are diving into one of the most powerful and, honestly, controversial books ever written, Thomas Hobbes's Leviathan. Now, this isn't just some dusty old book from the library. It's a work of genius that absolutely turned our understanding of power, government, and even ourselves completely on its head. So let's get right to the heart of it. For centuries, people have been wrestling with this big puzzle in Hobbes's work. On the one hand, he sounds like the ultimate cheerleader for absolute power, for tyranny even. But on the other hand, he's seen as one of the founders of modern liberalism. The whole tradition built on individual rights. So what's the deal? Which one is he? And this just lays the paradox out so clearly. Look at this. On one side, you've got Hobbes the absolutist. He's arguing the government, the sovereign as he calls it, needs a total monopoly on power. It should control everything, from the army to what's taught in schools. But then, on the other side, you have Hobbes the liberal, saying that government is just a contract that we, the people, consent to, and that this all-powerful ruler has only one job, to keep us safe. How can both of these possibly come from the same guy? Well, to figure that out, we have to see the world he was living in. See, Hobbes wasn't just sitting in an armchair thinking this stuff up. He was living through one of the most violent and chaotic times in European history. We're talking brutal civil wars, vicious religious conflicts. This chaos was the problem he was absolutely desperate to solve. I mean, just look at this timeline. The man was literally born during an attempted invasion by the Spanish Armada. He lived through the English Civil Wars, a nightmare that ended with the public execution of the king. He watched his Europe tore itself apart for over 100 years in the name of religion. For Hobbes, the complete breakdown of authority wasn't a philosophical idea. It was the terrifying reality right outside his window. So, to show us why we even need a government, Hobbes asks us to do a little thought experiment. He calls it the state of nature. I want you to imagine it. A world with no laws, no police, no courts, no government. Nothing and no one to keep us all in awe, as he puts it. What would that world actually look like? And here's the crucial part. For Hobbes, the state of war isn't necessarily nonstop fighting in the streets. It's more like a Cold War. It's that constant nagging fear and insecurity where you can't trust your neighbor, where the threat of violence is just always there. He thinks this is our natural state. For Hobbes, conflict is the default setting. Peace? Peace is artificial. It's something we have to build. And that leads us to one of the most famous and chilling lines in the history of philosophy. This is Hobbes's grim diagnosis of life without rules. Solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. This is the nightmare that he believes we have to escape from no matter the cost. So, if that's the problem, what's the solution? How do we escape this nightmare? This is where Hobbes drops his big, radical idea on us. We have to create an all-powerful sovereign. We have to build the Leviathan. Now, the Leviathan isn't some sea monster. Hobbes calls it an artificial man. It is the state, the commonwealth. And this is so important. It's not natural. It's something we, the people, build. It's a machine we invent through a social contract, and it has one single purpose: to protect us. So, how do we build it? Well, it all starts with a contract. Every individual in the state of nature basically agrees to give up their right to do whatever they want to survive. Then, they transfer all of those individual rights to one single all-powerful ruler or assembly. And the result? The Leviathan is born. It's a state with a complete monopoly on power, created for the sole purpose of keeping the peace and ending that horrible state of war. And this image just illustrates the idea perfectly. If you ever see the original cover of the book, it shows this giant figure, the Leviathan, whose body is made up of thousands of tiny people, all looking up at the head. And in one hand, it holds a sword, that's military and civil power, and the other, a scepter, that's religious power. The message couldn't be clearer. To avoid chaos, power has to be absolute and it can't be divided. Now, to make the case for such a radical idea, Hobbes knew he couldn't just use the old arguments. He believed he had to start completely fresh. He needed to invent a whole new civil science, a science of politics that would just shatter 2,000 years of thinking. And this chart shows just how revolutionary he was. For centuries, everyone followed Aristotle, who said politics was about achieving the good life, and that we're all naturally social animals. Hobbes comes along and just blows that all up. For him, the only goal of politics is to avoid being killed, and we aren't social animals, we're selfish, individualistic machines. Order isn't something we find in nature, it's something we have to artificially engineer to control our own brutal nature. It's a complete 180. And this quote really gets to the heart of his radical, materialistic view of us. To him, humans are just really complicated machines. What's the heart? It's just a spring. What's life? Just the motion of our limbs. This wasn't just some weird philosophical tangent. This was the foundation of his whole project, to build a science of politics based on cold, hard mechanics, not on fuzzy ideas about virtue or happiness. And you really can't overstate his ambition here. Hobbes genuinely believed that by using this new science, he could design the perfect state, an immortal commonwealth, he called it, a government so perfectly engineered that it would be immune to the civil wars and the collapse that had destroyed every other society in human history. He wasn't just trying to win an argument, he was trying to solve the problem of political violence forever. So why on earth are we still talking about a book written over 370 years ago? Well, because Hobbes' ideas didn't just describe the world he saw. In a lot of ways, they actually created the modern world we're all living in right now. Let's just break down his legacy. For starters, he basically invented the vocabulary of modern politics. Words like sovereignty, rights, the social contract, that's all Hobbes. He also framed the one question that we still can't stop arguing about: what actually makes a government's power legitimate? And seriously, every time we talk about nation building in a war-torn country or debate how much freedom we should give up for more security, we are basically having a conversation that Hobbes started. Which brings us right back to our original puzzle. Was he for tyranny or was he for liberty? And maybe the best answer is that he's essential for both sides of that argument. He created the intellectual blueprint for the modern state. And in doing that, he created the very language, the very framework that defenders of absolute power and champions of individual freedom still use to argue with each other today. His paradox is our paradox. It's the central tension of all modern politics, that constant tug of war between our desire for freedom and our deep-seated need for security. So I'll leave you with this. Hobbes' big question isn't just some historical artifact. It's a deeply personal one for every single one of us. To guarantee total peace and security for you and everyone you love, how much of your own personal freedom would you be willing to hand over to an absolute authority? That is the timeless challenge of the Leviathan.